Momoland's new comeback, I'm So Hot, features such attractions as thermostat problems, words appearing in the air, and a lot of bounce and energy, which is to say, it's a certified bop. Let's discuss these in reverse order in this episode of Classical Composer Breaks Down the K. To understand the elements going into that, let's look at some history, starting quite far back, in fact. A bit on either side of 1700 in France, there was a performance style called note inégale. Now, it's hard for us to know exactly how that worked because, for one thing, there weren't recordings, and for another thing, it was apparently so obvious to everyone at the time and place how to do it that they hardly wrote about it in treatises. One such small explanation is in François Couperin's I'm not going to pronounce French. It's called The Art of Touching the Keyboard. And in it, François Couperin writes, "We write differently from the way we play. For example, we dot several eighth notes in succession, moving by conjunct degrees. However, we write them in equal time values." So they would write the notes as being the same length, but they would play them unequally. And the current consensus, based on several such sources from the time, is that they would play the first part of the beat slightly longer, approximately, although not necessarily exactly, 2/3 the length of the beat, and then the second part of the beat slightly shorter, approximately 1/3 of the beat. Which is to say, they played it with swing. But before we talk about swing, we need to talk about ragtime. So in the late 1800s, marches were very popular. They were also very square. Marches sound kind of like this. That's so square you could put it on Instagram without cropping it. But in the 1890s, people started ragging marches, moving notes that would have been on the beat to be a little bit early or late. This sort of displacement of notes from the beat is called syncopation. We naturally expect notes to fall on the beat. Not because of any musical training, it's just the most natural, intuitive place for them to happen. And so, when there's syncopation, we as listeners tend to lean into the beat, where we expected that note to happen, to compensate for its absence. In an odd way, by de-emphasizing the beats, syncopation makes us feel those beats more strongly. And there's the difference from a march. A march is made to be easy to step to, and ragtime keeps the march's clear beats in the pianist's left hand. But ragtime's melodic syncopation does more to actually induce you to want to move to the music than a march could. Let's rag that march I played a moment ago. And after making rags out of existing pieces, people started composing new rags. The most important ragtime composer was Scott Joplin, perhaps most famous for his 1899 Maple Leaf Rag. Swing may not have been a part of ragtime performance, but it was a part of jazz, which developed in the 19-teens. And so when Jelly Roll Morton, the first major jazz composer, played rags, he played them with swing. That is, with the notes on each eighth beat a little bit longer than the notes off of them. Note inégale had disappeared from classical performance practice long before this, so it would be wrong to imagine that jazz musicians picked up swing from French music. Both the French of centuries ago and the Americans developing jazz about 1 century ago had presumably developed it independently for approximately the same reason. It sounded good. Or, to be more precise, making the weaker parts of the beat slightly shorter makes them lean forward into the next beat, creating a sense of forward momentum. Combine the swing of jazz with the syncopation of ragtime, and you have music that has both more motion toward beats and the displacement of melodic notes from those beats. Which is to say, swing and syncopation have synergy to make the music even more dance-inducing. Let's swing that rag. As time went on, with groups like Louis Armstrong and his Hot Seven, and no, I didn't make that up for the sake of a joke, they were actually the Hot Seven, and Duke Ellington's bands, the tempos tended to become faster, further boosting the rhythmic energy from the swing and syncopation. There was a lot of great jazz between then and now, but we must skip forward to electro-swing, a style pioneered by Parov Stelar and Caravan Palace, and now decisively led by Caravan Palace. Electro-swing combines stylistic elements from modern EDM with those of swing from circa the 1930s, sometimes using samples from old swing recordings, and sometimes using newly composed music in that style. The beats in electro-swing tend to come distinctly from EDM, and by emphasizing the beats clearly, they serve much the same function as the pianist's left hand did in ragtime, establishing a clear metrical framework against which the melody's syncopations are set. Electro-swing influences started to filter into K-pop as early as 2013 with FX's song Snapshot from their Pink Tape album. but have picked up more recently with songs like 12 O'Clock from Uju Sonya's Uju Stay album. Momoland's I'm So Hot still stands out for a couple of reasons. It's perhaps the most unambiguously electro-swing song in K-pop to date, and it's a really fast 16th note swing. Snapshot was at 103 BPM, 12 O'Clock at 120 BPM. I'm So Hot is at 128 BPM. Now, that's not an exceptionally fast pulse on its own. Luna's Hi Hi is at around 193 BPM with straight rhythms. But I'm So Hot is unusually fast for a K-pop song with swung 16th rhythms. There are songs with quick 8th note swing, that is where the swing is applied to each pair of 8th notes. So 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. But 16th note swing, as in the songs I've been talking about, applies the swing to each pair of 16th notes. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Momoland actually had a little electro-swing influence before this. Compare Perov Stellar's Jimmy's Gang to the beginning of Boom Boom, Links in the Doobly-Doo. While they're certainly not the same, I heard a little connection there even before the newest comeback. And that's what makes I'm So Hot such a good comeback for Momoland. It builds on their existing electro-swing influenced sound while taking it further, so it never turns into Boom Boom 3. As for words appearing in the air, that seems to happen a lot there. Someone says, "Welcome to Momoland," and you say, "Who are you?" And bam, words freeze in the air. It's great. As for their thermostat problems making them so hot, they ought to be careful with all those explosions going boom and bam and the like. Those reactions are exothermic. Also, just over in Neverland, there was that electrical fire, so it might be spreading. Thanks for watching this episode of Classical Composer Breaks Down the K. Links to the songs I mentioned are in the description, and of course, if you haven't checked out I'm So Hot yet, give it a listen. And that's what makes I'm So Hot